Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, hello, and welcome to our conversation this afternoon on access services. I'd like us to get started. My name is Mbali Thabethe. I'm from EarCandy Dubbing, the continent's leading content localization service provider. We provide dubbing services in over 30 African languages. And I'm really privileged to be steering and facilitating the conversation this afternoon, just simply because of the work we do around this very important topic of access services. I am literally just a facilitator. I have a panel of experts or people working in the industry who are going to unpack this very layered topic for us this afternoon. So I guess I will start with you, Jabaar. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is a privilege to have you on the panel this afternoon. Jabaar is an award-winning TV presenter. He won his first SAFTA last year. He's a deaf community activist. He also has his own TV show with Cape Town TV, Accessibility with Jabaar. So it is a pleasure to have you on this panel. Welcome.
Thank you.
Next to Jabaar, we have the policymakers. We have Ntombi Makwetu from the Department of Communication and Digital Technologies. It used to be Department of Communication. Now it's Department of Communication Digital Technologies as part of our digital focus, I guess. Mm-hmm. Welcome. Ntombi is a policymaker and has represented the Department of Communication in a number of industry and sector panels. And she'll tell you a little bit more about what she does in a minute. Welcome.
Thank you.
Miss Lala Tuku wears many hats. She's a lady of many hats. Some of you will know her from Arif. She's the founder and chairwoman of Arif. I'm going to be gender specific, chairwoman of Arif, but also she's the group executive for video entertainment at the SABC. So welcome. We look forward to having you in this part of this conversation. And last but not least, right next to me is Julie. So Julie and I work together on audio description, which is one of the access services functions and facilities. But she's also an established screenwriter over and above the audio describing role. So she works, she's a partner in Wild Words, apologies, and she has been instrumental in promoting audio description in South Africa, together with her business partner, Harry. So welcome. Thank you for the conversation. For those of you who are not aware, the purpose of this conversation is to discuss access services in South Africa. Somebody asked me this morning to say, what is your panel about? What is access services? So I have a panel that will unpack access services for you this afternoon, but the focus, with a slight focus on audio description, which is what we are going to be homing in on. I would like to kickstart the conversation. I think, Ntombi, you're probably the perfect person because you represent the department that's responsible not only for the country's digital transformation, but creating policy that supports and facilitates accessibility to content. So I would like to start with you and ask you a very simple question in terms of why is making content accessible good business practice, and what has the department, from a policy perspective, done and achieved to facilitate this?
Thank you very much. Let me first greet the audience as well as my fellow panelists. I'm going to be talking within the confinements of the audio and audiovisual content services policy that the department is currently busy with. Probably just to allow the audiences to understand what the policy or the main objective of this policy. We're developing the policy just to make sure that we upkeep with the new developments within the audiovisual industry. Specifically, we are aware that we now have new services. We used to have your traditional broadcasters, which is your free-to-air, the SABC, ETV, subscription, multi-choice. We now have what is popularly known as the OTT services, which is within our own language, we call them video-on-demand services. So the policy has to make sure that we also make sure that those gets regulated, and we also level the playing field, because we all know that traditional broadcasters are heavily regulated in this country. So we need to make sure that everybody gets regulated. Now, coming back to the topic, within the white paper, there are 3 proposals that we are making just to make sure that persons with disabilities have access to content moving to the future. One of those is really to make sure that we extend the regulations to the audio and audiovisual content services, which is your OTTs, so that we make sure that everybody else has access to content, including persons with disabilities. So in the main, we need to make sure that those regulations get extended to the video-on-demand services. Secondly, we are proposing that the regulator, being ICASA, on annual basis, they need to develop a research report that indicates in terms of how far we are as a country and the players in making sure that persons with disabilities have access to content. The third proposal that we are making in the white paper is to say we need to establish a fund, a digital fund, wherein services for people with disabilities can be provided. Let's say, for an example, the SABC would want to extend those services, that they have resources for them to be able to do that. So in the main, we've got those 3 main proposals within the policy.
Wonderful, thank you. I think that sets the tone. Jabaar, I'm going to come to you now, because as a person living with a disability, but also you also wear the hat as a TV presenter and a producer of your own TV show and content that speaks to people living with various disabilities. Yeah. How have the policies that have been established by the department facilitated or promoted accessibility for you as a deaf person and other people living with disabilities?
Hi, everyone. Firstly, yes, it's a woman's voice. I'm a man. She's voicing over for me, so don't get confused. Thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of the panel. It's quite an honor. To answer your question, Mbali, when I approached CTV, which is Cape Town TV, I started something there with them because I've seen that on the broadcasting channels, etc., there isn't anything accessible. And my idea was to join their program where they did a producer and mentorship internship. When I completed that, I then started my own TV show. The TV show's name is Accessibility with Jabaar. And the show means that wherever I go, I expose accessibility needs. And I've showed a lot of success stories within different sectors of disability. The stories that we show, it's not for pity purposes or to show that we cannot do, but it's sort of inspiring stories that we share with the media. And the basics of the reasons why is accessibility, which for us means subtitles, voiceovers, as well as South African Sign Language interpreters. So yes, I'm a presenter, but I still need access to those services. Obviously, the audience would also need access because they don't know South African Sign Language, or they would need audio, or they would need, we don't know, so we cater to the wider target as well. So Cape Town TV is the first station that I've worked with that accepted for me to start the show with him, and hence my journey becoming a TV presenter and producer as well. I've approached other production companies, but have not had any luck thus far, and hoping my partnership with CTV would grow. We do definitely use subtitles. We've approached, as I mentioned, different programs as SABC as well, but we haven't had any luck. So hopefully going forward, the exposure would be there. And then South African Sign Language interpreters is quite important. Or they think that just because they have interpreters on the TV, that's enough, but it's not. Subtitles are needed because also for voiceovers need to be as clear as possible. So that kind of accessibility and that kind of different types of accessibility from a deaf person's perspective, you need to consult with us so we can advise you on how to do better accessibility modules.
Wonderful. A very valid point. You've raised a lot of issues, some of which we'll come back to in a short while. I just want to move to the public broadcaster. Obviously, part of your mandate, I would like to think, is to make content accessible to all South Africans and to all citizens, all people who are within the country, to be able to have access to content. Could you walk us a little bit in terms of what are you doing as the public broadcaster in terms of access services and making content more accessible to people?
Amazing. Good
Especially in the context of 30 years on, you know, the country celebrates 30 years of democracy, and our constitution, which is said to be the most robust constitution in the world, speaks to that. So how are you doing that?
Thank you so much for that. I
Can't
don't know
hear
if
you.
I'm audible. Should I use this? Thank you so much for that, and a very good afternoon to everyone. And it's a pleasure to be sitting here on the panel with these experts. Thank you for that. The SABC is a national broadcaster, and we exist to maintain, preserve, and really to enhance our South African identity. We do this, and the reason for our existence is really to plurality of voices, to really showcase our country, and is to talk to all target audiences. So when we talk about that, it's all race, gender, age, and everyone that is South African. That's what we aim to do, is to entertain them. So this becomes quite integral in terms of how it is that we do our work. All our programs are subtitled wall to wall. We have closed caption. You've just raised a very interesting point around adverts and subtitling of adverts. We are under huge strain when it comes to our percentages of how it is that we communicate to the disabled community. It is a serious concern. I think our leader speaks to the policies that are currently underway to make sure that it is something that is within reach. It is an expensive exercise for us. We've made sure that contractually, we actually contract, and it is a clause in the contracts in terms of how it is that we deal with this part of society. So it's something that for us, we continuously look at. The SABC is currently financially strained, and when it is financially strained, there are things that have gone, and just to be transparent and open, these are some of the things that have taken a back seat. And I always say in every panel, to pay our TV license just really sounds like, but the revenue stream and where it would need to go. Everyone needs accessibility to our content, to our stories, and it's not just for those that are, whether privileged or whatever the case may be.
Thank you, Lala. I mean, I agree with you, but I think we are at the stage where it's no longer a nice to have. It is an imperative, right? A business imperative for everybody to have access to content, whether it's information, entertainment, whatever information it is. Which segues very nicely. Well, come back to you, to Julie. Welcome, Julie. So, as I said, Julie is a writer. She's an audio describer, which is a new discipline in the industry. And I'd like you to maybe kind of talk to us a little bit about what is audio description and what are some of the challenges that you face in the work that you do.
Thanks, Mbali, and welcome to everyone. Thank you for being here and being interested in this very important topic, and thanks to all my fellow panelists as well. And I think that audio description and all the access media are hugely important in terms of making things accessible. And we all know that, we say watching a movie, but perhaps we should change our language and say experience a movie together or television together. It's a very sociable thing to do. You know, families love to go to movies together. They love to watch television together. It's a communal experience. And now you're saying that if someone is living with a disability, they can't share the same experience with their family. I mean, if you are a parent living with a disability, but your child wants to consume content, how do you know what content they are consuming? Just for example.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's more than just the enjoyment of watching a film, but I mean, I think everybody in this room loves watching films and watching television. So what audio, I think we're familiar with sign language, we're familiar with subtitles, which then cater to people who are sighted. But how do you then consume a film if you are non-sighted? So yes, you can sit and you can listen to the film or the television, and you get a lot of the story from the music and the sound effects and the dialogue of the actors, but you don't know what people are doing in between. So this is where audio description comes in, where we then as writers are actually filling in those gaps, explaining what happens in between. And it's quite an interesting discipline. So I come from obviously a background of screenwriting. I also became interested because I'm a voice artist as well, and it felt like a good confluence actually, because what audio describers do is we write a script for a narrator to then describe what is happening in between. And it's an interesting discipline because we have to just try and introduce the character, but we can't give the audience any more information than what they would have had if they were watching. So, you know, they would be saying, Jabaar walks in and sits down, but if he hasn't been introduced by his name on screen, I would say then a man in a blue suit walks in and sits down. So what we do as Wild Words, we're involved in doing the actual audio description, which is writing the scripts for an audio description narrator, but we're also very involved in training. And I really became involved in it because my business partner in Wild Words, Harriet Mayer, was one of the first audio description trainers.
Actually, the expert. She's the
She's
most
the
experienced
expert.
person in the country that we have in audio
Yeah.
description.
So she did the early training and became accredited and one of the two sort of recognized in South Africa. And so she's spearheaded the division. And so obviously it's something that we love as a discipline. As Wild Words, we do work with subtitles and closed captions and other elements. But it's interesting because you have to really be very intentional about what you write and how you write it. You've got to not interpret, which is difficult for a writer because, you know, we want to say, we can say the tears run down the person's cheek, but we can't say the person is devastated and so the tears run down their cheek, because that's interpreting. So it's quite an interesting discipline.
That means there's a lot of skill and training that is required for somebody to become an audio describer.
Absolutely. And so we are working with programs that would probably be familiar to people who work with dubbing or with subtitles or with editing. So there's programs that we have to learn. We've got to work with time codes. And I think, so audio description as a bigger skill, they work in things like if you go on an art gallery tour, you can look at a picture and you can be listening to the audio description, which will be describing the picture and saying, you know, there's a black background, there's a woman with red lipstick in an avant-garde, whatever. And they have lots of words. So when we train people to describe other things, we can encourage them to use more language and more words. Now when we get to the screen, it's quite challenging because the time is very limited. You know, often there's wall-to-wall dialogue, and so you're trying to explain that someone's running across the room, or they slapped someone, or they pulled a gun on someone. And in some genres, you have to find different ways of saying so-and-so pulled a gun because there was an awful lot of gun pulling. So it's quite short, and then we also have to get subtitles. So if there's a vernacular, where we also, which is great about our country, is we have a mix of languages, but then we have to say subtitle in Mbali, in Sotho, so that the person watching knows that what they're going to hear next is a voice giving the subtitle.
I think you have highlighted and unpacked some of the challenges involved in audio description, and I think as an industry, it's a new field, it's a new discipline, and a lot has to be done in terms of an investment, in terms of training, and getting people more familiar. I'd like to circle back to you, Jabaar. I think what Julie highlighted are some of the challenges from an audio description perspective. Coming back to you, what are some of the challenges from sign language, interpretation? What are the skills that need to be developed and enhanced in order for content to be made accessible? I mean, as we speak, you sit here as a panelist, but your voice interpreter is a woman. So I come from a dubbing company. If we were dubbing the content, I would have a nice, deep voice for you, interpreting for you. So maybe you can speak to us about some of the challenges.
Thank you for that, Mbali. That is a challenge for us. As a deaf person, I watch TV. A deaf community comments a lot on the challenges they face with the content they see on TV. And for example, if you see a person signing, we've got a tone. Every person has a tone. So if I sign very fast, the interpreter needs to be able to voice very fast. If I sign very slow, the interpreter needs to voice over slow. So it needs to match my tone or my level of signing and my level of language. I can't just bring in any interpreter that I don't know to voice for me. So for example, if I say, hello, 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 my name is Jabaar, the interpreter voice over, hi, my name is Jabaar. Then it means the person is not skilled. So we've got different levels of skilled interpreters that are able to voice over, that are able to sign. And also we specialize, I know in SABC News, we have a challenge with interpreters on SABC News because code of ethics, their dress code. I look at that. Code of ethics example for interpreters is their dress code is 1 point. So like I'm dressed now, I can't interpret like that because this white upon navy is the distraction on screen, so it needs to be plain clothing, plain colored clothing. So now we have interpreters that wear red top on TV. My eyes get sore. So we've commented on things like that. However, we don't feel like it's being listened to. I think that too much consultation is done with interpreters instead of the deaf. And so I think that maybe we need to consult after this with Lala just to clarify code of ethics for interpreters, because interpreters are not the presenters of a show. They don't need excessive makeup, they don't need excessive cosmetics, etc. There is a code of ethics that they should follow. That's one main challenge when it comes to sign language interpreters. Then when it comes to a deaf person specifically, you need to have an interpreter that matches the capacity or the level of the deaf person when you need someone to voice over for them. So it needs to be a full voiceover. They can't be dropping out information or making up information or assuming that that's what the person's saying. And also bearing in mind South African Sign Language is at different dialects. So interpreters need to know those different dialects. So if I sign mother, that's the sign for mother, or mother, or mother. Interpreter must know the different dialects. And that's very important for a deaf person as well. So if you have a deaf person on a panel, allow them to choose interpreters that match their skill level or the level that they need. You can't just bring on any interpreter. So that's a challenge we also face. Then moving on to subtitles. We've asked subtitles for all channels. We know that interpreters can't be provided on all channels. But subtitles specifically, especially for those that are hard of hearing that don't utilize South African Sign Language, they would maybe have, like Julie said, the audio descriptions, etc. Or, there's moving captions. That's not really the best accessibility for us. And I think we are in 2024 now. We should have accessibility, accessible to download subtitles, etc. I watch the news on YouTube. I don't watch on TV. Yes, I pay my TV license, but but I utilize the
Thank
news
you
on
for being
YouTube
a good citizen.
Yes, yes,
because there's access to subtitles there.
yeah.
So I click closed captions so that I can see and read what's happening. So I don't really watch TV. I can't remember when last I switched on TV. Yes, I watch Netflix, but for news purposes and general knowledge, I would rather go to YouTube.
Ntombi, I know you do not wear the ICASA hat. ICASA is not represented, but they are your agency. So maybe you could talk a little bit to us about the Access Services Code, which was gazetted in 2021, and in essence came into effect from October 2022. All platform owners, all broadcasters, as per their licenses, are supposed to comply. There's obviously various varying percentages of the level of compliance, with I think SABC having the highest level. Are platform owners, broadcasters, are they complying? And if not, what do we need to do? Because clearly we need to fast track this process. What needs to happen?
Okay, Mbali. Thank you very much for the disclaimer, by the way. ICASA is a Chapter 9 institution, even though they do report to the department. I think as you've indicated, ICASA had developed their regulations. They are also responsible for the implementation of those codes. They are also responsible for monitoring and enforcement. And I think, as you said, I think we do need to try to do better, because I was actually trying to check their last report in terms of compliance, and I wasn't able to find it. However, there is a compliance committee at ICASA for anyone that would want to complain if they don't have access to those services, especially persons with disabilities. They do have a right for them to complain through that committee.
Wonderful. So, Jabaar, if you are sitting and watching SABC, Netflix, so not just you, anybody, and you don't, but obviously it's in the context of what their quotas are.
Yeah.
It's not just every program has to have those
Should be reasonable
absolutely, those
access.
facilities.
Yeah.
So you want to comment about something specific?
Yes, I just wanted to add to that. Maybe ICASA needs to sort of, just maybe need to update a few things. Internationally, accessibility is on all channels. I've been to the UK. I can see on adverts. I can select if I want subtitles or if I want to remove the subtitles. So I know it costs money, yes. But I don't think it's that expensive if you look at the bigger picture. Also, the way that you provide accessibility. Netflix being an example, you have the option to have the subtitles or you can switch it off. And I think that they could do the same as well. You can, I think, the option of using subtitles or not, because I know some people don't prefer subtitles, some do, but as the deaf, most would go with the subtitles. So I think having that option where you have subtitles or not, maybe ICASA could add something like that into their policies. And also in future, have a deaf person on your team that you consult with in terms of accessibility for the deaf on your broadcasting channel. So sometimes you get the wrong information. Or, for example, something that's very finicky could be the details or the sizing of the subtitles that you provide. Could be something that you'd need to look into. Also, the background of the subtitles. Maybe you need a black background with white subtitles. Something that's all those things. And you want it to be universal as well on all channels. So there is a high demand in the community that needs that. And I think the time is now.
Absolutely, couldn't agree with you more. And I think what you're raising is a point that Lala kind of alluded to earlier, saying, there are some barriers, financial costing, but I actually want let's talk a little bit about what are some of those barriers. Why are broadcasters, content creators, why platform owners, why they're not implementing these access services. I'm going to go back to you because you started and mentioned the cost factor.
Yeah.
But can you unpack that a little bit? But also, what do you believe are some of the other barriers? And then I'll come to you from a creative writing perspective, what potentially the barriers could be.
I don't know if I'm audible now. Still not audible. Okay, we're sharing. That's fine. The conversation that we're having is very complex. It's multi-layered in its nature, and I think with we were talking about 30 years of democracy. For me, whenever we have the conversation in the building around if we are doing enough, it's almost a conversation when we say, do we see enough representation of women on screen and how it is that they are represented? Not just homogeneous, not just with one layer, but multi-layered. And I think you spoke of it so well when you said, how are they dressed? How fast are they going? Is it black? Is it white behind the screen? So there's so much that we need to understand and to do that there isn't enough. So access for me, I'd say as a country, we're not doing well. And this is the issues that we're struggling with to say if we are intentional about it, because policy will take us so far, but it's in the implementation of it. And we may have barriers such as money, which is a thing, because in 2019, when I was doing my research for this panel, a SABC task team was put together on access services to come up with how best and how quickly are we able to move as a broadcaster to make sure that we are representative. And what was able to come out of that was that we've got more shows that speak to persons living with disabilities. We've got more shows, we've got more presenters. So the numbers have gone up, but in terms of including, in terms of where we're going to need funding, so whether we're going to need, is it, you mentioned, YouTube may have this and that, we may not have, there's certain funds that need to be invested into certain platforms to make sure that we can achieve that. On SABC Plus, we raised that. We've got a new digital service called SABC Plus. So I said, can they click and choose what language of subtitling, how they want to do it, and audio description and on and off. And it was, we had to add a couple of millions to get to that. So as a national broadcaster, where if just the 5 of us are paying our TV license and not everyone, so those are real barriers that we're faced with. Skilled individuals such as Julie or Harriet were speaking about earlier. Do we have enough Julies around? Do we have enough people who are in the room to assist us? Because I definitely am not skilled enough to go, it can't be this presenter, it has to be that, And so that's where I think we're challenged as a country, that we're so diverse and we need to accommodate so much that things are falling through the crack, I must say. And as the department was saying, I think there's much more to be done. And I'm hopeful that in the years to come, this room will be full, because everyone in this market will understand that it affects them as much as it affects us who are sitting in this room. And so I think there's just so much work that still has to happen. But I'm excited to say that we are turning the corner as SABC. There are funds, and this panel itself has made me aware of the actual dire need. Just listening to you, detailing. Because once we've got, I asked for stats earlier, so I was like, in all our shows, what? And I'll read it to you. But after you spoke, I was like, maybe I don't read the stats, because they could be wrong. There's 98% of all our shows are subtitled wall to wall. They've just pulled out that 70% on closed captioning, and then 20% on sign language. And then I said audio description, and they've said 0%. So that really talks to, but we are huge on data. That's what informs our business. And if I can make an assurance now, is that will be a top priority for us, just like with everything else, to see how do we close the gap, because there is a gap.
Wonderful.
All right, I'll just carry on. And I think if I can just say one thing, Lala, to make my colleague here feel a little bit better. I do believe SABC was one of the first ones. There was a series called Sticks and Stones that had audio description. I think that was the first one that was done. So with pioneering, SABC is always there. They pioneered the way in terms of languages, making sure that there were mandates. So I think the cost factor is huge. And all of us understand, as you know, we're the ones producing, that budgets are constrained. So I think that whilst there is a cost factor to access media, I think the important thing is to understand that because we're widening the audience, it also means that our content will then attract more viewers. And it's quite interesting. I follow a lot of industry groups, and there was a discussion on an international group recently on LinkedIn. And they were talking about the fact that so many people now actually prefer to consume content with subtitles. And it's strange because 5-10 years ago as a filmmaker, we'd go and pitch a multilingual project and everybody would go, no, we're not interested in content that's got subtitles, for example, or multilingual, because so much of the world market was English. And now people are actually looking for that content. They find multilingual content interesting. So I think that audio description has come along behind. There's been a very big lack of awareness. Like people really don't know it exists. But what was interesting about this group was that people were saying, yes, I like watching with subtitles, and other people were saying, well, I like watching with audio description, even though, they don't have a disability. They just enjoy the audio description, and it is quite an art form.
Yeah.
Is it also a function of where and how we consume content? Because somebody could be sitting there just outside this room and they're watching something, but because there's maybe noise interference, so they would prefer to then have subtitles. But also, there's people who may not speak English, right? So the subtitles, them being able to choose. So it's not just for the blind, for the hearing or visually impaired. It's for other marginalized people within that community, a particular community.
Absolutely. So it's being done in all the different languages, which now suddenly makes a show that's dominant in one language accessible to other languages. So I think there is a commercial aspect, but awareness is a huge thing, and that's why forums like this are so important. Filmmakers as well, when they make their film, when they're producing, when they're directing, they don't even have an awareness that audio description is going to be done. Most of them will know that there's going to be closed captions probably, but they don't know. And it doesn't mean to say that they have to make the film differently, but I just think that even when they do their budgets, when they're doing post-production, it's not kind of being factored in as one of the elements of post-production. So I think awareness is a huge thing, the understanding of the benefits, and I think, like you said, it's not just a nice to have, but it's an important to have in terms of widening the audience. And I do think that the streamers have had a lot to do with the way, people consume, like sound mixes. For streamers, it becomes difficult to hear, actually. Even sometimes it's hard to hear the dialogue, even as a hearing person. So that's why people have started, and it's just become a thing. And now you've got this menu of options. Do you want audio description? Do you want subtitles? And a lot of people are choosing it. So I think it does. It really broadens the base. We can broaden the languages. We can make it accessible. And it's a really great thing.
And I think also just picking up on audio description, I mean, there's a potential. We know the unemployment stats in South Africa. We are now creating, with these developments, we're creating a new work stream, work opportunities, because now it's a new discipline. These are new disciplines. We need people who are skilled and can be trained to work in this discipline. So we're actually investing in ourselves.
And if I can speak to that, I mean, it's one of the reasons why Wild Words is so committed to training and, helping to promote, trying to promote the importance of it, because it is a job creator. And our industry's tough. It's a gig economy, people are freelancers, and it's good to have different strings to your bow. So it is work that's being created for writers, where they can add another skill to their skill set, but also to people living with disabilities. There's room for when you guys do quality control, that function can be done by non-sighted people, where they can be sitting and testing and saying, okay, Julie's a sighted person. She had to be, because she had to watch the screen in order to describe what was going on. But did she do it right? Did she get it right so that I'm understanding it as a non-sighted person now experiencing the film? And so they do quality control, and that's like a job opportunity where we can be opening up work. So it's very important.
Awesome. Thank you. We are going to be running out of time soon. I just want to go around the panel. There's a lot of talk shops that happen about a whole lot of things. This cannot be. We spoke about how 30 years on, we still have people who are not able to access content. And I'm not even talking entertainment. I'm talking about information. News on television. So how do we take this forward? Yes, the conversation has to be ongoing, for starters. So I'd like to hear from each of you in terms of how do you propose we take this forward? We finish here today. What would you like to see? Jabaar, starting with you.
Thank you. What I would like to see going forward is collaboration, not something being done for the deaf or for the disabled. Work with us, work with the disability sector, especially experienced people in the field that live with a disability. So, for example, my partnership with CTV, working with me, they've now gained the expertise through our partnership and understanding how to work with disabled producers, TV presenters going forward. And I would love for ICASA, SABC to work together with the deaf communities. I understand they need to understand the broader context of what the needs are, and also the structure of South African Sign Language and how it's been portrayed in the UN Convention of the Rights for Disabilities. And so things that are stated there, it's not necessarily being implemented in South Africa, and I would like to see those points being implemented here. So hopefully in the next 5 years, I want to see the change from today, starting today, subtitles for all, including the news, adverts, etc. I know that there is a cost involved, but that's my dream. And for all of us, I think for deaf people specifically, we've been waiting for 30 years. I've paid my TV license, I'm paying you guys every month, but I'm watching Netflix. But I do think we can work with ICASA as well as SABC.
Thank you, Jabaar.
That's my side.
Thank you. You've been heard.
Yeah.
Don't be.
Thank you, Mbali. I'm not sure, am I audible?
No, you're not. Can I give you this mic?
All right.
Thank you very much. In conclusion, Mbali, it's funny that you mentioned the issue around unemployment, because I've just gone through the ICT research report. I think it was produced early this year. That says about 80 to 90% of persons with disabilities are unemployed, and one of the impediments is access to ICTs and assistive devices.
Right.
And one of the proposals that they are making in the report is that besides policy, what other strategies do we need to come up with just to make sure that we accelerate access to content? As far as the department is concerned, we are at the tail end of finalizing the white paper. Hopefully, it will be fast-tracked in terms of implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think in conclusion, I'm so happy that you brought up research, and I think that's probably what we need to do, is just to get a situation analysis of sorts. It seems that our information is probably in pockets. It seems that there's a void of information. And what SABC thinks is an 80% achievement is probably sitting at 22 if we had to look at what does achievement mean. So whilst we may think we're actually achieving in terms of reaching all our audiences, but there may be a disjuncture in the actual accuracy of the information. So I think that's something I can say we can definitely commit to say in the next fiscal, how do we make sure to assess where we are as a broadcaster, maybe with the help of the department, to look at just the situation analysis. And then second to that, it is in our targets to have stakeholder engagements. So perhaps that's something that we can do, is to make sure that before the end of the fiscal, which is next year, March, we have a stakeholder engagement led by ourselves here. We can commit to that just so that we begin, because I'm also, the talk shop makes me anxious. I get very anxious as an individual about talk shop. So I think it would be an imperative that it's something that I can definitely champion from our side, to have the stakeholder engagement, and then to see if, I don't think it would be that expensive to get research out just to look at the situation. Thanks.
So from my side, I think what I said before about awareness is very important. I think we need to keep having these conversations. I'm very happy to see some colleagues from Dawn, which is a new industry body that's been formed by Karen, I think, is the chairperson. My colleague over there is one of the members. And this is an industry body for people living with disabilities, which is invisible disabilities as well as the visible. And I think it's very important, and I hope that that body will be supported so that they're able to continue raising awareness around it, because people need to be reminded that this is real. So that's one. And then also, like I said, to keep reminding people that as much as there's a cost involved, there's a commercial benefit to it, in that we're broadening our audiences, not, to a broader audience. People are liking it. And then we need training. So we do need government support and industry support in order to conduct training so that we can train people. We need to train people in all the languages so that when a broadcaster or client comes and they say, okay, now we need audio description in this language or that language, that there are people who are able to do that job. But by the same token, to train people and there are no jobs is a very frustrating exercise. So we need to be creating the demand and then training at the same time so that we can match people to actual jobs, so that we don't train people and then it's like we give you a license to drive a car, but we ain't never given you a car. We need to train them so that there are jobs.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. I'd like to thank all my panelists for this afternoon. I think I am going to take it upon myself. I am going to facilitate the stakeholder engagement. It is a subject, access services is a subject that's really close to my heart because I came onto it by accident. But I am going to facilitate the stakeholder engagement. I have all of you as witnesses. They are looking at me and they're saying time's up, but can I just do one question, please? One right here. One. Okay, sorry. We are available after here, so maybe we can just touch base on the side. I'm sorry for not being able to facilitate your questions, but thank you very much for your time, your input, your expertise. This conversation is going to continue, and definitely before the next fiscal, we are going to have a follow-up conversation. Thank you.